My name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this card. Now I'm going to vary it slightly because I'm a little bothered by how much cream there is showing here. So I'm going to put this on a Sahara Sand background. So let me tell you what pieces you're going to need for this card. I have a piece of Sahara Sand, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and we'll just burnish that and get that all ready to go. Then I have 2 pieces of Very Vanilla that measure 4 1/8 by, let's see, what is it, 5 3/8. So just ever so slightly smaller to fit on the front of this card. Then I also have 2 pieces of card, one Very Vanilla and one I'm using, what am I using? I'm using Sweet Sugar Plum, and these measure 3 inches by 4 inches, so 2 of them the same size, 2 inches, 3 inches, what did I just say? 3 inches by 4 inches. Okay, and the stamp sets I'm using this time are something called, let me just get these moved off of here, something called Background Bits. Now this is a hostess set. The hostess sets this time are so beautiful. In fact, the 2 that I'm using on this are hostess sets. Background Bits, and the other stamp set that I'm using, and I've just moved my stamps off of it here, is something called Tranquil Tulips. Boy, I hope they turn this into one that carries over in the catalog, because this is absolutely gorgeous. So Tranquil Tulips. So in the Tranquil Tulips one, I'll be using the large tulips, and it's a 2-step stamping process. And the 3 stems, the 2 larger leaves, and one of these little stamen stamps here, and I honestly can't remember which one I've got. So this stamp set, and then out of this Tranquil Bits, I am using this beautiful script. It's been a long time since we had a little piece of stamp that's a script, and I love it. And then this little texture piece here, it kind of looks like the embossing folder for the trellis, but it's just a muddy little background stamp, and that's exactly how I'm going to use it. So that's what I'm using today. And so the very first thing we're going to do is work on this first piece that's going to go in the background here, and for that I'll need some scratch paper and my Sahara Sand ink. And what I'm going to do is use this little stamp here, this little texture piece stamped in Sahara Sand, and I'm going to stamp off and then just stamp around the edges. And in fact, one of the things that I did was just stamp and pull so that it's even muddier than it was originally intended to be. So kind of stamp and pull, because I just want to get the texture around the edges here. And we'll go all the way around this stamp, or this card. And then I just put a little bit of extra texture on the inside here. And then I used the script stamp and again, stamping off and then putting very faint pieces of this script down here on the card. And I'm going to use this stamp again. So I just want to get that edge. Then I'm going to come around the edge of this using my sponge, and I'm going to muddy those ends just a little bit more by coming in and sponging around the edge of the card and a little bit into the little darker in the corners. Okay. And if you use your sponge by going off of the card base and then back on, what you end up getting is this more firm definition along the edge here of the darker color, because as the sponge comes back on the card, it ends up hitting that edge and you get more of a defined color. And I just wanted to kind of muddy this up and make it look a little bit more vintage. And if you start off the page and swirl on, you also don't get any really dark circles. So it's a way to sponge, and that's one that's kind of one you can practice on just a piece of scrap and see what kind of effects you get and which ones you like better. Okay, so I think now I've kind of lost my definition around the edge for some of this stamp, so I think I'll go back and put a little bit of that back on. This is one of those cards that I think you can just kind of mess around with, and there's almost no way to screw it up. It's just what you kind of like in the end. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I've got some of the script, I've got some of this other stuff, and I've got a pretty defined edge. Okay, the next thing I'm going to work on is this little piece here. And with this one, I'm doing a similar kind of thing, except I'm just using the script and not the other stamp. So I put the script here at the top, and then I didn't stamp again, didn't ink again, and got that covered. And I put some of this script pretty much all the way down the page, lighter and darker. Okay, then I did the same thing with sort of sponging the edges here. And then on this card, you'll notice on this one, to make it even more so, I both distressed the edges and then tore this piece, and I'll show you in a second here what I did there. What I did here was I just took a little edge and I tore it towards me. And the reason you tear it towards yourself is, do you see here how the paper tears away and leaves the rough edge behind? If you tear it away from yourself, that part will be on the back and you won't have the same effect. So if you tear it towards yourself, you get that kind of raw edge so that you can see it. Now, what'll happen then is I'll go back in and ink that edge up so that I get the kind of effect I want. Now, I have this tool. It's a distressing tool, and you can go around the edges, and what it does is it just kind of roughs up the edges of the card and takes little pieces of it out. And You can accomplish exactly the same thing with a pair of scissors. By holding your scissors and coming along the edge and distressing. So I'm going to show you that as well. And do you see how it's just distressing the edge? Sometimes I use the distress tool just because it's made for doing this and it makes it a little easier, but there is no reason in the world you can't just do this with your scissor edge here. And then I like to run my fingernail underneath it so that all that nice distress work shows on the top of the card. And it gives your card a very vintage look. Now what I'll probably do is go around just to make sure that any of those little white pieces that I managed to bring up get covered again by the ink. And the way to keep from doing that is to do your distressing before you do your inking of your edges. But there you go, I have a nice distressed piece. Now, what I'm going to do for this piece is I didn't do much in the way of stamping. All I did here was do that same distressing business. And I'm just going to put this away and we'll just use the scissors so that you really see how easily that's done. And I think you can see exactly what I'm doing and you see the effect that you get there. And then again, if you lift it with your fingernails, then you get all of this nice rough edge at the top. So just go on around and distress this piece. And then make sure those edges get lifted towards the top of your card. Okay, now we can go around and do that same inking process around the edge of this one. And a lot of this card piece is hidden behind the other card piece, but I like making it uniform. And the piece that's going to show the most is this end. So I just make sure that there's plenty of the Sahara Sand on that side. Okay, so there we go. And when we put these two pieces together, they'll go together like this, and you've got all of those nice distressed edges showing. Okay, so let's see. I think that is all I need. You know, I'm really tempted to go around and distress this outside piece as well. Why not? Okay. As long as I'm going to change it up from the original, I might as well continue to do it in a consistent kind of way. It really does just take a second to do this. This is just a little bit harder because it's a much bigger piece of paper. But push those edges up along there and make sure that they're inked all the way around. There we go. All right. Now, for further stamping, I think that's all I need the Sahara Sand for. I will now shift to this beautiful tulip image. And this tulip stamping is a two-step stamping process. And let's see, for that I'm going to use my Sweet Sugar Plum, and I chose Old Olive. And so the first thing we're going to do is use our stems and put the stems down here. Let me just clean this off. And putting the stems onto this piece, you have to be mindful of where you want your tulips and that you give them enough room to show on your piece of paper. So I think that these stems need to go just centered here, so that this the center stem here, if you can see that, is shorter than the others, and I want them to go all off the page so it looks like they're the same length. So I'm just going to pick that spot, and so now all three of my stems are on the page. Okay, then I'm going to do the leaves, and there are two leaves. One that is a leaf that is standing up, and with that one, I think I'm going to put that one on this side here. And the leaves don't stamp perfectly, and that's by design. They are, in fact, shaded to show not an even kind of stamp. The second leaf is this one, and it's got this cute little turned over piece at the top. And so I'm going to put that one on this side, and there I've got my little cluster of leaves and stems. Now, one of the things you can do, I don't know if you can see this on here, but there's almost a little crisscross pattern, and you might be able to see it on the stamp itself, but you can definitely see it once you stamp the piece here. There's kind of a crisscross pattern, and I wasn't crazy about that. So I used my blender pen to just kind of blot that out. By going over it a little bit, what it does is it pulls the color across the leaf, and it minimizes that cross-hatched look and just smooths out the color a bit. It's still shaded, it's still not all perfect, but that cross-hatching business is gone, which I wasn't crazy about. Okay, there we go. And I'll probably do the same on my tulips, although I may not, because I kind of like the faded look of them. Okay, so that does it on the old olive ink and the Sahara Sand ink. And now we have our tulips to do. And it's two-step stamping, so you have a more solid image here of the larger tulip, and then the petals to simulate sort of the front of the flower. And so the first thing I'm going to do is put this larger one here at the top. And I'm going to go right to the edge of the stem. I think that's where I've got it. And stamp that down. And there it is. It's a little bit faded, but that's kind of the look I'm kind of going for here. Then this stamp goes over the top of that, and again, you want to get it as close as you can to stamping on top of the tulip, and that one is just right. I found a couple of times where I stamped an image. See if no, I don't. Oh, yeah, I do. I have one here where I stamped an image, then I fussy cut this one out for another card, and you can see right along the bottom here how the second stamp is in a little bit and leaving a margin, and I didn't like that. Now, if fussy cutting, I can just cut that away if I choose to. But when you're stamping directly, you want to be really careful to get it down, otherwise it doesn't look quite natural. Okay, so that's that one, and then I have a little stamen here, and I'm going to stamp that, I think, in Early Espresso, because I don't want to do it in black. I do want to do it in another brown. And so I am going to just take those little stamens and being very careful where I put them on the tulip, give it kind of a finished look without being black. Okay, on to the next two tulips, and they are this smaller one, and it's exactly the same thing, a more solid image, and then one with a little bit of detail. So making sure I'm back to my sugar plum here, I'm going to put this first one right on the top of that stem, and this one right on the top of this stem. There we go. Now then, just keep moving things out of the way here. All right, so now it's to the detail for the smaller. And again, to be careful to get it as close to the bottom as you can for the most look of realism. And there, that's perfect. And I'll bring these up so you can see them. And one of the things I'm doing to place this, because you can see through this stamp, because it's a photopolymer, you can almost intend to get this just having a tiny bit of the stem that you're stamping over, and that way you'll anchor it to the bottom of the flower. But you can see that both of those now really get a good look of realism on that. All right, now I'm going to take my early espresso stamen here, and I'm going to add those stamens to the inside of these little flowers. There we go. All right, so now that is not quite all the stamping. All right, so now we can finish putting the front of our card together. So what I'm going to do is adhere these two together, and what I want to do is fit this on the front of the card so that I know it won't go off either side, and that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to put just a quick pencil mark here on the back, here and here, and I know that my glue needs to be on the inside of those marks, because I'm going to raise this up on dimensionals once we get going. So I can make sure that my glue is in the appropriate place. Then I can put this back down, lining it up on those pencil marks, and the pencil marks are in the back. So you can erase them if you choose, but no one will ever see them. And that should now fit right here on the front of my card, and it does. Now, I used a little bit of detail ribbon, and this is some of the new 1/8 inch, let's see if I can see what it says. This is Old Olive, and it is the 1/8 inch ribbon, and isn't that just luscious looking? I just think it looks wonderful. So I am going to put it on here, kind of across this way. So I know I need a piece, let's see, about that long. And that measures, let's see, right at 5 inches, and that's plenty. And that's where I want to get it set on the card. So I'll hold that in place and then turn it over, and put a little snail right along the edges of where that's going to glue down. So I'll glue one side down. Yeah, that's a little high. More like about there. Put one piece in place, then draw it across until I'm happy with where it is. I have to do it this way so I can see whether it's semi-straight or not. There. Put it on like that. All right, now this piece, let's see. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my silicone mat and I am going to put just a bit of snail on this ribbon as it pulls across, because it looks like it wants to bow. There. And then it'll stick down, and I know that's not going anywhere. Okay. Okay, very good. All right. And then I wanted to show you, I was watching somebody on YouTube, I think it was Connie Stewart, and you know, we all have trouble with bows from time to time, and I know the people in my classes are always happiest when I make the bows ahead of time for them. But she did this, and I thought it was so clever because it is so simple. Now I'm leaving my ribbon attached to my spool, and she made a loop on one side and then made another loop on the other side, and then just tied these two loops together. Put one inside the other and pulled it up through, and look at that. A bow just as quick as you can imagine, and a pretty good one. And so another way yet to make a bow. Now this one I didn't end up with my tails on the same side, but maybe I can manipulate that. But I thought that was so clever. So just the two big loops. You probably use a little bit more ribbon this way, but the two large loops here like this, and you literally take one loop and fold it over the back and bring it underneath. And when you do that, you get a bow. And then you can manipulate your tails and do whatever you want. But I thought that was clever, and I'm going to show my class that, see if they like that any better than what they've been doing. So, meanwhile, while I've done that, I've pulled this bow out of sync. Okay, so let me just trim my tails here. These scissors need sharpening. Okay, and I'm just going to attach my bow onto maybe to one side. And I decided to make this a note card. You could certainly make it a birthday card, a thank you, or whatever you wanted, by just adding a sentiment right down here would be a good place to do that. And I'm going to adhere this bow with just a little bit of Tombow. Put some Tombow on the back here and put that right on my stretch of ribbon. Give that a second to glue down. You really could have put that on last. Okay, so now I have, let me close up my ink and push that all away. Get my ribbon gone, and Let's see, I'm not seeing that card base that I folded, but I have another. Oh, there it is. It's right underneath here, hiding. Okay, so now that bow should be on there nice and firmly. So this piece can now go on the front of our card, and I'm going to use Tombow for that. Then these two pieces I'm going to put right on the front here. So let's see, I think I'm going to raise those on dimensionals. I'm going to center that right on that card. And I think even a just a note would work down here, or any other sentiment that you want to put on. But I think that's really attractive. Very pretty. Now, we have the inside to do. And so I have a piece of very vanilla, and right now it looks awfully bright. So I am going to bring back my Sahara Sand ink, and I think I'm going to distress the edges of this card, this piece of cardstock here. And then to mimic the front, I think I'm going to tear this corner right here towards me, and I'm going to tear this opposite corner the other way. And then I'm going to lift all of those edges and then I'm going to sponge the edges of this card. And maybe I will use the script again. These words, stamp off once, and then maybe just put them here along the bottom with the small tulip. Oh, in Sahara Sand. Well, why not? Okay, in Sahara Sand. And then the detail tulip on the bottom here, and the stamen there. And as long as we're doing it, maybe we can add a leaf. And as long as we're doing it in Sahara Sand, might as well do them all in Sahara Sand. There we go. All right, so now that is the inside of our card. And I will take that and add that in here. Yeah. And this time I'm going to use snail. there we have it. There is our card. So let me move both of these out of the way, or all of the rest of this stuff out of the way, and we'll put the cards side by side, and you'll have to let me know what you think about which one you like better. Let's see here. Well, I had just about everything out, didn't I? All right. I think that is most of the stuff out of the way. So here we go. We have our card that's got the rim of the Sahara Sand on it, and then we have this one. You know, as I look at that, I do think I like this one better. It has more depth and dimension and more contrast. And for me, contrast is almost the most important key. That a card, this is pretty, don't get me wrong, but I love the edging around here. It looks more finished to me. So you'll have to weigh in and let me know what you think. But that is today's card, and thanks so much for stopping by my YouTube channel. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, and or you could join my team. The joining process for Stampin' Up! Is that you get $125 worth of product for $99, and when you join my team you get another $40 worth of product. So you get $165 worth of product for $99, and I'd love to have you join me and the rest of my group. Thanks so much again for stopping by, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a one. See you next time. Bye.